else that's just very interesting about this word, forgive. You see, when he said, Father, forgive them, the implication is this: forgive them, but condemn me. You see, because he became a curse for us. You know that. He became poor that we might become rich. He died so that we wouldn't have to die. He became our substitute. And so when he said, Father, forgive them, really what happened was this was a sacrificial act that he separated himself from all mankind. He became the unforgiven that we might become the forgiven. Amen. Yes. And so he said, forgive them. Forgive them. And my friends, this prayer cost him his life. It was a sacrificial prayer that caused him to die. Not in vain, not even as a martyr. Listen, he was not martyred. You see, because he gave up his life. If you talk to doctors, medical doctors or biologists, they will tell you that when a person is about to die, if they're standing in a reclining position, what's going to happen is that the last breath that they take is they're going to, and then their head will drop and fall because there's no more life in the body. And so the head naturally drops. You know, something happened with Jesus. The reason why I know he wasn't a martyr, you see, because Jesus, it was in the reverse. He laid his head down and said, Father, I commit my spirit into your hands. And the Bible says he gave up his spirit. He laid his head in the locks of his shoulders. And then he gave up the ghost. You see, so my friends, they didn't kill him. He was not martyred. He laid down his life for you and me. He laid it down. But his request was, Father, forgive them. Father, forgive them. Now, there's something interesting about this word forgive. And I'm going to get to the last point of his prayer. But something interesting about this word forgive. This word forgive here, it's translated suffer. It means to allow. Now watch this. Watch this. If you go to Matthew chapter 19 and verse 14, you will see this word that Jesus uses this word in Matthew chapter 19 and verse number 14. Matthew 19 and verse 14. And look at verse 13. It says, Then the little children were brought to him that he might put his hands on them and pray. But the disciples rebuked them. Verse 14. But Jesus said, Let the little children. That word let is the same word that Jesus is using here in Luke 24 and verse 46. He says, Let the little children come to me, and do not forbid them, for such is the kingdom of heaven. And so, my friends, Jesus was not directing the disciples to forgive the little children, but he said what? Let them come to me. All right? And so it really can be translated, let it be. In other words, let it happen. Now let's go back to Luke chapter 23 and verse 34. Then Jesus said, Father, forgive them. You apply the Greek there and what it means. What is he saying? Then Jesus said, and he kept on saying, Father, let it be. Allow it to happen. For they do not know what they do. What is he saying? He's saying, let this, me being on the cross, let it be. Let it continue to happen. Don't allow the angels to come and to take me from the cross. He had you and me in mind, my friends, by saying, let it happen. Let them do what they do because they don't know what they're doing. And so he was praying. Let it happen. And so this forgiveness, my friends, that they were thinking about, they were attempting to prevent the soldiers from carrying out their purpose. And they said, you remember what the thief said? He says, if you be the Son of God, he says, take yourself down off this cross and save yourself. Jesus is saying, let it be. Father, forgive them. Let it be. Let it happen. And so we see his request. We see his request, my friends. But I think the last thing here is the recipient of his prayer, the request of his prayer, but then lastly we see the reason for his prayer. And the reason was, for they do not know what they do. If they would have known, you think they really, if they truly knew who he was, they wouldn't have allowed it. They wouldn't have allowed it. But you see, they were acting in ignorance. They didn't know. They ignored the fact that he said in 3 days I'll raise this temple. That they ignored all the miracles that he did. That they ignored the fact that he said, I am the Son of God. They ignored the fact where he says, I am the true vine. I am the light of the world. I am. They ignored all of that, my friends. So the reason why he prayed is because they do not know what they were doing. They didn't know. And so this first prayer that Jesus prayed was for you and me. He had us in mind. And he called on the Father and said, forgive them, for they know not what they do. But you know, my friends, we can look at the fact that the Jews and the Romans crucified. But you know, you and I, we were there. We were there because he died for sin of the world. All that sin and come short of the glory of God. And the wages of sin is death. But the gift of God is eternal life. You see, when he was on that cross, he was our substitute. I remember one church father, as he looked and he saw a painting of Christ on the cross. And he looked at that painting and he said, Lord, come down off of that cross. You don't belong there. I do. He was perfect. When we are born in sin and shapen in iniquity. But because he became our substitute.